Somebody else can play them. I'm not going to play them. I don't want it too close, so make it louder. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddhanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskita Deshatarane. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Namane. Offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna on this earth, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayataya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances to Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayata Das, who is favored by Srimati Radharani, and who is the ocean of transcendental mercy and the deliverer of the science of Krishna. Madhuri Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, the personified energy of Sri Chaitanya's mercy, who deliver devotional service enriched with the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, coming exactly in the line of revelation of Srila Rupa Goswami. Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Siddhanta Dvanta Harine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the personified teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You are the deliverer of the fallen souls. You do not tolerate any statement against the teachings of devotional service enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. So today is the 149th, 1874 through 2023, Avirbhav Mahotsav, the observance of the appearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. We will chant this Guru Parampara, which is written and compiled by His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself directly. And of course, a final verse 10 was added on to glorify Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, which was not, of course, written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Okay. Krishna hoite chaturmukha hoy Krishna sevan mukha Brahma hoite nara dermati Krishna hoite chaturmukha hoy Krishna sevan mukha Brahma haite nara dermati Narada hoite vyasa Madhvaka he vyasa dasa Purna Pragna Padmana Bhagati. Nirhari Madhava Vamse Aksobhya Paramahamse Shishya Boli Angikara Kare. Aksobhyera Shishya Jaya Tirtaname Parichaya Tara Dasya Jnana Sindhu Tare. Taha hoite daya nidhi taradasa vidya nidhi Rajendra hoilo tanha hate. Tanhara Kinkara Jaya Dharma Name Parichaya Parampara Janu Balo Mate. Jaya Dharma Dasya Kyati Shri Purushottama Yati Tanhaite Brahmanya Tirtha Suri. Vyasa Tirtha Tanra Dasa Lakshmi Pati Vyasa Dasa Tanahaite Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Purivara Sishyavara Shri Ishvara Nityananda Shri Advaita Vibhu. Ishvara Puri Kedanya Koralena Shri Chaitanya Jagadguru Gora Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya Rupanuga Janera Jivana. Vishvambara Priyankara Shri Svarupa Damodara Shri Goswami Rupa Sanatan. Rupa Priya Mahajana Jiva Raghunatha Hana Tanra Priya Kavi Krishna Das. Krishna Dasa Priya Bara Narottama Seva Para Yanrapada Vishvanatha As. Vishvanatha Bhakta Sata Baladeva Jagannatha Tanra Priya Shri Bhakti Vinoda. Bhagavata Bara Shri Gora Kishora Bara Hari Bhajane Te Yanra Moda. Ihara Paramahamsa Gorangera Nija Bamsa Tandera Charane Mama Gati. Ami Seva Udasina Nameta Tridandi Dina Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati. Shri Varsha Banavivara Sada Sevya Seva Para Tanhara Dayete Dasa Nama. Tara Pradana Pacharaka Shri Bhakti Vedanta Nama Patita Janete Daya Dhamma. In the beginning of creation, four-headed Brahma received the science of devotional service from the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Brahma taught this divine science to Devarshi Narada, and Narada imparted it to Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas. Sripad Madhvacharya, who is also known as Purna Pragna, calls himself a servant of Vyas and is the guru and sole refuge of Padmanabh Tirtha. The two other principal disciples of Madhva are Nirhari Tirtha and Madhava Tirtha. Madhava Tirtha accepted the great Paramahamsa Aksobhya Tirtha as a disciple. The principal disciple of Aksobhya Tirtha was known as Jaya Tirtha, serving whom was Jnanasindhu's only purpose in life. Jnanasindhu taught the science of devotional service to Dayanidhi, whose servant was Vidyanidhi. Vidyanidhi in turn imparted this knowledge to Rajendra Tirtha, and he accepted Jayadharma as his servant. In this way, you should properly understand this disciplic succession. The great sannyasi Sri Purushottam Tirtha received the knowledge of devotional service from Jayadharma. The principal disciple of Purushottam Tirtha was the saintly Subramanya Tirtha, whose servant was the great Vyasa Tirtha. Vyasa Tirtha's servant was Lakshmi Pati Tirtha, and his disciple was Madhavendra Puri Goswami. The chief disciple of Madhavendra Puri was Ishvara Puri, and two of his other disciples were the renowned incarnations of Godhead, Sri Nityananda and Advaita Acharya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the spiritual preceptor of all the worlds, made Ishvara Puri greatly fortunate by accepting him as his spiritual master. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, and is the very life of those Vaishnavas who follow in the footsteps of Sri Rupa Goswami. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami gave great happiness to Vishvambar, Lord Chaitanya. The great souls Jiva Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami became very dear to Rupa Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami's beloved student was Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami was an intimate friend of Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Goswami's single disciple was Narottam Das, who always engaged in the service of his guru and was also very dear to Krishna Das Kaviraj. To serve the lotus feet of Narottam Das Thakur was the only desire of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was the instructing spiritual master of Baladev Vidyabhushan. Jagannath Das Babaji was a very prominent acharya after Sri Baladev Vidyabhushan and was the beloved instructing spiritual master of Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's intimate friend and associate was the eminent Mahabhagavat Sri Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, whose sole joy was found in Hari Bhajan. And this is the concluding statement of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to this great delineation of our infallible Guru Parampara. All these great saintly Vaishnava Paramahamsas are members of Lord Gauranga's spiritual family. Their lotus feet are my refuge. I am devoid of any real interest in devotional service and am but a poor and lowly Sri Dandi sannyasi named Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Note, following the custom of Vaishnava authors, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has placed his name at the end of this song to glorify Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and his beloved disciple, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, as spiritual masters in disciplic succession from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The translator have composed the following verse, which may be it's not going to be, this is wrong, substituted for the 9th verse, added as the 10th verse. The renowned Sri Barshavanavi Daitya Das, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is always engaged in the service of his spiritual master, Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji. His foremost disciple preacher is Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has spread the message of Lord Chaitanya throughout the world and is thus a reservoir of compassion for all fallen souls. Hare Krishna. Adore ye all the happy day, blessed in heaven, sweeter than May. When he appeared at Puri, the holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace. O my Master, the evangelic angel, give us thy light, light up thy candle. Struggle for existence, a human race. The only hope is divine grace. Misled we are, all going astray. Save us, Lord, our fervent pray. Wonder thy ways, to turn our face. Adore thy feet, your divine grace. It's wander thy ways. Forgotten Krishna, we fallen souls, paying most heavy the illusion's toll. Darkness around, all untrace. The only hope, His divine grace. Message of service thou hast brought, a healthful life as Chaitanya wrought. Unknown to all, it's full of brace. That's your gift, your divine grace. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. This gives us a life, anew and fresh. Worship thy feet, your divine grace. Had you not come, who had told the message of Krishna, forceful and bold? That's your right. You have the mace. Save me a fallen, your divine grace. The line of service as drawn by you is pleasing and healthy like morning dew. The oldest of all, but in new dress, miracle done, your divine grace. So this was written for the 61st birthday of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur on the 25th of February, 1935. Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada, composed this poem, which interestingly enough had been lost by Srila Prabhupada until Guru Das found it in a library in London in 1969, and when Srila Prabhupada came there in the latter part of that year, he was greatly pleased to see this poem as he had written it some 34 years earlier. On that occasion, Srila Prabhupada also composed a speech which he read before the assembled guests and members of the Bombay Gaudiya Math, which he had helped to establish. Although his first language was Bengali, his English was clear and natural. Gentlemen, the offerings of such an homage as has been arranged this evening to the Acharya Dev is not a sectarian concern, because when we speak of the fundamental principle of Guru Dev or Acharya Dev, we speak of something that is of universal application. There does not arise any question of discriminating my Guru from that of yours or anyone else's. There is only one Guru who appears in an infinity of forms to teach you, me, and all others. The Guru or Acharya Dev, as we learn from the bona fide scriptures, delivers the message of the absolute world. I mean the transcendental abode of the absolute personality, where everything non-differentially serves the absolute truth. Like the poem, the speech was personal, but even more than the poem, it was authoritative, philosophical, preaching. The Godbrothers were impressed to hear Abai presenting the Vaishnava philosophy so expertly. How is it possible? Of course, it should not have come as a surprise. He had heard the Vaishnava philosophy from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, just like his godbrothers. Why should he not be able to enunciate the teachings of his spiritual master, having heard from him and having read the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? Until now, no one knew he could preach in English so expertly. Therefore, if the absolute truth is one, about which we think there is no difference of opinion, the Guru also cannot be two. The Acharya Dev to whom we have assembled tonight to offer our humble homage is not the Guru of a sectarian institution or one out of many different exponents of the truth. On the contrary, he is the Jagat Guru, or the Guru of all of us. The only difference is that some obey him wholeheartedly, while others do not obey him directly. The Guru of whom Abai spoke, of course, was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the representative of the original compiler of the scriptures, Vyasadeva. Abhay explained how Lord Krishna had delivered transcendental knowledge to Brahma, the creator of this particular universe. From Brahma, the knowledge had descended to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, from Vyasa to Madhava. Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was presenting the Vedic knowledge as it is, without any interpretation, in parampara, he was the bona fide acharya who could enlighten others with the revealed knowledge of the Vedas. Gentlemen, our knowledge is so poor, our senses are so imperfect, and our sources are so limited that it is not possible for us to have even the slightest knowledge of the absolute region without surrendering ourselves at the lotus feet of Sri Vyasadeva or his bona fide representative. We must conclude that the darkness of the present age is not due to a lack of material advancement, but that we have lost the clue to our spiritual advancement, which is the prime necessity of human life and the criterion of the highest type of civilization. Throwing of bombs from airplanes is no advancement of civilization from the primitive, uncivilized way of dropping big stones on the heads of the enemies from the tops of the hills. Improvement in the art of killing our neighbors by inventing machine guns and by means of poisonous gases is certainly no advancement from primitive barbarism priding itself on its art of killing by bows and arrows, nor does the development of a sense of pampered selfishness prove anything more than intellectual animalism. Thus, while others were yet in the womb of historical oblivion, the sages of India had developed a different kind of civilization which enables us to know ourselves. They had discovered that we are not at all material entities, but that we are all spiritual, permanent, and non-destructible servants of the Absolute. The speech continued, describing the horrible consequences of a misspent human life, the sufferings of repeated birth and death. Again and again, Abhay stressed the need to surrender to the spiritual master. He criticized empirical, mundane philosophers, godless politicians, and blind sense gratifiers. He repeatedly pointed to the soul's natural and sublime position as the servant of God and as the servant of the pure devotee of God. Abhay, an initiated disciple of his spiritual master, for little more than 2 years, referring to himself as a student, continued. Gentlemen, although we are like ignorant children in the knowledge of the transcendence, still His divine grace, my Guru Dev, has kindled a small fire within us to dissipate the invincible darkness of the empirical knowledge, and we are so much so on the safe side that no amount of philosophical argument of the empiric school of thought can deviate us an inch from the position of our eternal dependence on the lotus feet of His divine grace. And we are prepared to challenge the most erudite scholars of the Mayavad school on this vital issue, that the personality of Godhead and His transcendental sports in Goloka alone constitute the sublime information of the Vedas. He then ended his speech with an eloquent prayer of submission. Personally, I have no hope to have any direct service for the coming crores of births of the sojourn of my life, but I am confident that someday or other I shall be delivered from this mire of delusion in which I am at present so deeply sunk. Therefore, let me, with all my earnestness, pray at the lotus feet of my divine Master to let me suffer the lot for which I am destined to do for all my past misdoings, but to let me have this power of recollection that I am nothing but a tiny servant of the Almighty, absolute Godhead, realized through the unflinching mercy of my divine Master. Let me therefore bow down at His lotus feet with all the humility at my command. He submitted both the poem and the speech to the Harmonist, one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's premier preaching magazines, particularly directed to intellectual English-speaking public. For Abai, however, the real glory of the Sri Vyas Puja homage came when the poem reached Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and gave him pleasure. One stanza specifically made Srila Bhaktisiddhanta so happy that he made a point of showing it to all of his guests. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. Somehow, in this simple couplet, Abai had captured the essence of his spiritual master's preaching against the Mayavadis, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took it as an indication of how well Abai knew the mind of his Guru Dev. Abai was delighted when he heard that the couplet was pleasing to his spiritual master. One of Abai's godbrothers compared this verse by Abai to a verse in which Rupa Goswami had expressed the inner thinking of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and had thus moved him to ecstasy. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also found the essay pleasing, and he showed it to some of his confidential devotees. He instructed the editor of the Harmonist, whatever he writes, publish it. So, such a glorious personality, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. We're observing his appearance day today. How important it is that there is a living disciplic succession of authorized, qualified, bona fide acharyas, actual representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to continue through what we perceive to be time. It is our time, or in such and such time, and the time into the future. But we should always remember and know firmly that in the spiritual world, time is conspicuous by its absence. No time, always now. Krishna, as the inconceivable, unlimited Supreme Controller, can enter into time and turn it into transcendental eternality. He does that by coming himself and by always maintaining his disciplic succession of pure devotees. It's not that only the great devotees appear when Lord Chaitanya is present, and then after that, tough luck, better luck next time, you missed the boat. We see the feelings of separation expressed by Srila Narottam Das Thakur, especially and in particular, but he was given the charge to not only maintain, but continue and expand the parampara. In his case, so much so that for all of time everlasting, his simple prayers, Prarthana and Prema Bhakti Chandrika, are to be revered and respected as the direct gateway to the summum bonum of Radha and Krishna in Braja. Some 350, 400 years after his time, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, the great spiritual master of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, took Prarthana and Prema Bhakti Chandrika as two of his only possessions. Whatever he had could be carried in a basket. He was so renounced. And he would remark, getting love of Godhead is very easy. You just take 2 annas, which was like taking 100 rupees these days, to the Rasa Biharilal bookshop and buy these books. Prema Bhakti Chandrika and Partana. Of course, one has to be qualified to read these books and have the mercy of Narottam Das Thakur and Krishna, who is described in these books, to completely envelop your soul in love of Godhead. That's a different matter. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he appeared at a time when his predecessor, who would also become his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, was greatly concerned about how he could possibly overcome the influences of time, or Kali Yuga, which for many generations and 200 or 300 years had led to Lord Chaitanya's movement being obscured, confused, even infiltrated or contaminated by various types of apasampradaya, sahajiya class of persons, so much so that standard good people, pious people, what to speak of intellectual and intelligent people, thought that Lord Chaitanya's movement was simply a movement for licentious and completely deviated persons. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he prayed to the Lord that your teachings are very much depreciated, and it's not within my power alone to resurrect your movement. You must send me someone from your personal staff to help me. Our Prabhupada has said that one pure devotee, one moon in the sky is enough to light up the darkness in this Kali Yuga. Prabhupada in free verse rendering in the Krishna book, chapter 20, description of autumn and the rainy season. When the rainy season start, then the toads and frogs start to croak. And Prabhupada gives the example there in the Krishna book that students do not rise of their own accord in the monastery or cultural institution. Only when a bell is rang do they rise up and begin their duties of studying the Vedas. Similarly, in this Kali Yuga, everyone is sleeping in the darkness of ignorance, and by the calling of a great acharya, everyone rises to perform the duties of actual human life. I was hearing the final memoir of Bahulasva Prabhu, one of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples, and did a lot of important preaching work, particularly being a liaison for some of the more favorable scholars like Dr. Stilson Judah, to meet and develop an intimate relationship with Srila Prabhupada. He described how he became a devotee, and one of his hippie friends had met the devotees and had recommended that he come down and at the time to Los Angeles where Prabhupada was arriving, and he agreed to come. He was still a hippie with long hair, and the devotees instructed him to make a flower garland for Prabhupada, and when Prabhupada comes, you put it around his neck, which he did, and after he placed the flower garland, he paid his obeisances, and Prabhupada stayed there waiting for him to complete paying obeisances, and he looked up to Srila Prabhupada, who was gazing at him lovingly. He touched him on the head and said, "So when are you going to join?" So Bahalasva Prabhu, he said, "I had absolutely no intention of joining. I was just a hippie. But the way Prabhupada looked right through me with such love, I felt in that 1 second, my entire life changed. My entire consciousness shifted, and I just burst into tears, and I told to Srila Prabhupada, I'm joining now. That is the influence of a pure devotee. There has not been, there will not be such benefactors of the highest merit as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees have been. The offer of other benefits is only a deception. It is rather a great harm, whereas the benefit done by him, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his followers is the truest and greatest eternal benefit. This benefit is not for one particular country causing mischief to another, but it benefits the whole universe. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. This chapter in the Lifetime in Preparation Leelamrita is very aptly titled, A Very Nice Saintly Person. It is very appropriate that this is placed at the beginning of the chapter. We should always keep in mind that the movement of the Lord, the movement of the devotees of the Lord, is meant for saintly persons. Or it is giving the opportunity for everyone to join to become a saintly person. And here, the qualification of a saintly person, one of the most overarching symptom of a saintly person is given, that they are concerned to give not just benefit, but the greatest benefit to all living entities. Different persons who, in the eyes of, or in the estimation of the world, are considered to be saintly, they have their various ideas or programs to benefit others. Let's try to cure cancer. Let's try to stop animal killing. Let's try to stop human and child trafficking. So many things which these terrible things they're trying to stop shouldn't be there, of course. But what is the Shreya Uttamam, the topmost benefit, which automatically includes the cancellation of all of those heinous and barbaric activities? It is to give people love of Godhead, or help them to renovate their eternal lost relationship with Krishna, who is their supreme friend, supreme master, supreme parent, child, supreme beloved. So many times Prabhupada describes that if we make such relationships in those ways with Krishna, that relationship will never break. Our experience in this world, even in the best of relationships, they're ended at the time of death. And especially now in Kali Yuga, along the way, what is that? Is that Sun Tzu or Chanakya Pandit? Keep your enemies close. No, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. A lot of times, your worst enemy was previously your so-called best friend. This is not the case in the spiritual world in relationship with Krishna and Krishna's eternal pure devotees, who will also naturally be your best friends. What do they call it? BFL, best friend for life? How about BFE, best friend for eternity? Abhai's friend, Narendranath Malik, was insistent. He wanted Abhai to see a sadhu from Mayapur. Naren and some of his friends already met the sadhu at his nearby ashram at Ultadunga Junction Road. We celebrated perhaps the greatest meeting of two souls for the benefit of the entire universe 100 years ago and 1922, and now this wonderful place where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's Gaudiya Math mission was founded and expanded from in a very big way. The author of Srila Prabhupada Leela Amrita, His Holiness Srila Satsvarup Maharaj, at the end of compiling the entire 6+1, 7 books, in 1982, compiled a free verse rendering poetry of the entire 6 volumes of Srila Prabhupada Leela Amrita. So, as a compendium, you can read along. Or, if you want the essence, you don't have time to read the whole, you could read the poetry. The meeting. They met on the roof in 1922 in Calcutta. The evening air was warm. Stars and moon and scanty electric lights revealed the form of the saintly person sitting on the roof. And once he told him, "You are intelligent. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya's message to the whole world?" Abai challenged, "What about Swaraj? India is not an independent nation." "It doesn't matter," said his Guru Maharaj. "Krishna consciousness cannot wait and doesn't depend on king or president. All it needs is a pure devotee, someone submissive to his Guru and bold in Krishna's service." One was sent by Krishna, and the other also. One appeared as Guru, and the other appeared as disciple. And they met, Radha and Krishna, Arjuna and Krishna, Parikshit and Shukadev. Vidura and Maitreya, Lord Chaitanya and Rupa Sanatan. All these were great meetings, as was this in 1922, when the seed direction was given for delivering humankind. All the world was dreaming nightmares, threefold sufferings, and repeated births and deaths. But the way to their awakening was ordered that night by one who had seen the truth, to one capable, trusted, chosen, and blessed. It began from there. Now the spiritual work would begin. No more sublime discussion followed by inaction. No more centuries of charitable enlightenment locked within a crippled nation. Now it would burst forth according to the desires and plans of the acharyas. The release of all the jugais and mudais. The release of all the cave dwellers. So all these little apartments are like caves, where the Neanderthal men are dwelling. The liberation of women and children and animals and men. The ushering in of a golden pious age by the release of knowledge of the eternal soul and knowledge of loving union with God. Hope for everyone now was assured by this exchange between two powerful servants of the Lord. That the meaning remained hidden on that night was also the will of the Lord. So nothing would interfere with the sacred unfolding of his plans, starting with this confidential exchange that fools and rascals could not understand or disturb. In the guise of a young Gandhian, Abai appeared to be defeated. After he went downstairs, he revealed his mind. He is wonderful. Now I know Lord Chaitanya's movement is in expert hands. I accepted him as my spiritual master immediately, not officially, but in my heart. He was astounded to hear the Vaishnava philosophy presented so masterfully. Despite his involvement in college, marriage, the national movement, and other affairs, he had never forgotten Krishna. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was now stirring up within him his original Krishna consciousness. And by the words of this spiritual master, not only was he remembering Krishna, but he felt his Krishna consciousness being enhanced 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. What had been unspoken in Abhai's boyhood, what had been vague in Jagannath Puri, what he had been distracted from at college, what he had been protected in by his father, now surged forth within Abhai in responsive feelings, and he wanted to keep it. He felt himself defeated, but he liked it. He suddenly realized that he had never been before defeated, but this defeat was not a loss. It was an immense gain. So they walked down the stairs and onto the street. He was feeling himself less a Gandhian nationalist and now more a follower of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So his friend Narendranath Malik, who he had to drag unwillingly, goes, "Well, what did you think?" So, like in a normal thing, you'd be quite, yeah, it wasn't so bad. Oh, I guess it was all right, yeah. But Prabhupada, he's wonderful, replied Abai. The message of Lord Chaitanya is in the hands of a very expert person. So, while desiring and yearning and propitiating Lord Chaitanya for help, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said the following: "The religion preached by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is universal and not exclusive. The principle of kirtan as the future church of the world." Prabhupada says that people have lost interest in the churches and synagogues and erected by their forefathers. So we have to bring the church or temple to the people. And in the church, brought to the people, we're not promoting very awe and reverential, God-fearing religious ideas, which have been, for thousands of years, the idea of what religion is. We are bringing ecstatic singing and dancing in ecstasy. That is the church. Here is the church, this is the steeple. Open it up, and here are all the people chanting and dancing. The principle of kirtan as the future church of the world invites all classes of men without distinction of caste or clan to the highest cultivation of the spirit. This church, it appears, will extend all over the world and take the place of all sectarian churches which exclude outsiders from the precincts of the mosque, church, or temple. Lord Chaitanya did not invent himself to liberate only a few men of India. Rather, his main objective was to emancipate all living entities of all countries throughout the entire universe and preach the eternal religion. Lord Chaitanya says in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, "In every town, country, and village, my name will be sung." There is no doubt that this unquestionable order will come to pass. Although there is still no pure society of Vaishnavas to be had, yet Lord Chaitanya's prophetic words will in a few days come true. I am sure. Why not? Nothing is absolutely pure in the beginning. From imperfection, purity will come about. And a prime example is the most beautiful of all flowers, the lotus. It grows from the mud. Oh, for that day when the fortunate English, French, Russian, German, and American people will take up banners, mridungas, and cartels and raise kirtan through their streets and towns. When will that day come? While working to reform Gaudiya Vaishnavism, he prayed to Lord Chaitanya, "Your teachings have been very much depreciated. It is not within my power to restore them." And he prayed for his son to help him in his preaching. When, on February 6, 1874, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was born to Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jagannath Puri, the Vaishnavas considered him the answer to his father's prayers. He was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck and draped across his chest like the sacred thread worn by Brahmanas. His parents gave him the name Bimala Prasad. When he was 6 months old, the Jagannath cart stopped in front of his house, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the district magistrate, which also included he's the head of the Jagannath Puri temple. So his wife took the opportunity of their prominent position to bring the newborn baby, 6 months, this is younger even, 4 or 5 months old, and the garland of Lord Jagannath spontaneously fell down around the infant Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur learned that this had happened, he realized that this was the son for whom he had prayed. When he was still a child, barely 4 years old, his father mildly rebuked him for eating a mango not yet duly offered to the household deity. Bimala Prasad, although only a small child, considered himself an offender to the Lord and vowed never again to eat mangoes. So those of you who have spent time in India or any real tropical place know what an incredible vow this is to not eat mangoes, because mangoes are all over the place, especially in different seasons. This was a vow that he would follow throughout his life. By the time Bimala Prasad was 7 years old, he had memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita and can even explain its verses. So it was noted in his childhood that his head, because his brain was so big, was larger proportionately than the rest of his body. It's called Living Encyclopedia. He was truly Shrutidhar. Hearing once, it was memorized for life. By the time he was 25, he had become so well versed in Sanskrit, mathematics, and astronomy that he established himself as the author and publisher of many magazines, articles, and one book, Surya Siddhanta, for which he received the epithet Siddhanta Saraswati in recognition of his erudition at the age of 25. When he was 26, his father guided him to take initiation from the renounced Vaishnav saint Gorkishore Das Babaji, who advised him to preach the absolute truth and keep aside all other works. In 1905, Siddhanta Saraswati took a vow to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra 1 billion times. So that's chanting like Haridas Thakur 192 rounds a day, and takes approximately 8 to 10 years to complete. 1 billion names. Residing in Mayapur in a grass hut near the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, he chanted the Hare Krishna mantra day and night. He cooked rice once a day in an earthen pot and ate nothing more. He slept on the ground, and when the rainwater leaked through the grass ceiling, he sat beneath an umbrella chanting. So there's so much to be said. What time is it now? 9:15? Yeah. That's right. So our relationship with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is beautifully based upon our service to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, who, on the order of his beloved spiritual master, left India, came to the West, accurately pinpointing New York City, where we are, as our Prabhu Datta Desh, and under great struggle and against all odds, miraculously, Srila Prabhupada established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, thus ultimately fulfilling all of the desires of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to preach in the West. And Srila Prabhupada gave all those who helped him in any way, and what to speak of those who dedicate their entire life and soul and all their energy and their entire life, their whole lifetime, to Srila Prabhupada's mission, how much Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's blessings are there. In one of the first years, 68 or 69, Srila Prabhupada instructed all of his initiated disciples to write a glorification of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and it should be sent and compiled into a book. And Prabhupada said, I have nothing to offer my spiritual master except my disciples. Srila Prabhupada has said that previously you were all associated with Lord Chaitanya's movement, and by his order you were directed to take your birth in the Western countries, so when I would come, you would come forward and help me in my spiritual master's mission. Srila Prabhupada wrote at the conclusion of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that this Krishna consciousness movement has been formed to execute the order of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. There are many appearance and disappearance day lectures given by Srila Prabhupada. We'll take some time, a little time, to look at one, which was given during the Gaur Purnim festival in Mayapur in 1976. Today, the auspicious day of our predecessor, Om Vishnu Pad Pariv Jakacharya Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mission. Apart from his life, we are especially stressing on the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. This place, Mayapur, is the place of the birth site of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and after properly discovering it, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Jagannath Das Babaji, the present Yoga Pit was ascertained to be the actual birth site. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur wanted to develop this place very gloriously, befitting the holy name of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he started this movement of developing Mayapur. He could not finish it, so it was handed down to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So we were saying how the Calcutta Ultadunga Junction Road was where he started. That was for the act of preaching, but in his own words, the fountainhead of the whole Gaudiya Math is the Sri Chaitanya Math in Mayapur, where he erected the exact replica of Radhakund, Shamakund, Govardhan Hill, and where he had his specific house, Vijay Bhavan. And this is where Srila Prabhupada had intimate association with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, visiting him there. And that's the place where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and his spiritual master, Gaurkishore Das Babaji's actual samadhis are there. So we have named this temple Mayapur Chandradoya. We have got great ambition to develop this place nicely and gloriously, and fortunately, we are now connected with foreign countries, especially with the Americans. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's great desire was that the Americans would come here and develop this place, and they would chant and dance along with the Indians. So how appropriate that perhaps one of the greatest known Americans, certainly one of the richest, Henry Ford, his great-great-grandson, descendant, Ambarish Prabhu, is leading the way in developing the Mayapur Chandradoya Mandir. So this dream, as well as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's foretelling, Prithaviti Achiyati Nagaradi Gram, Sarvatra Pachar Haibe Moranam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared that all Indians take part. From this place, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started this movement, Krishna consciousness, throughout the whole India, and he desired, as many towns and villages are there, this Krishna consciousness movement should be spread. So this Krishna consciousness movement is now in your hand. Of course, in 1922, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wanted me to do something in this connection. He wanted from all his disciples, especially he stressed many times that you do this. Whatever you have learned, you try to expand in English. And in 1933, when he was in Radhakund, I was at that time in Bombay in connection with my business life, so I came to see him, and one friend wanted to give some land in Bombay for starting Bombay Gaudiya Math. He's my friend. So that's a long story, but I wish to narrate this, the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami's mission. So at that time, one of my godbrothers was also present. He reminded me about my friend's donation, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur immediately took up the land. He continued that there is no need of establishing many temples. Better we publish some books. He said like that. He said that we started this Gaudiya Math in Ulta Danga. The rent was very small, and if we could gather 2 to 250 rupees, it was very nice. But since this J.V. Datta has given us this stone marble temple, our competition between the disciples have increased. So I don't like anymore. Rather, I would prefer to take out the marble stone and sell it and publish some books. So I took that point, and he also especially advised me that if you ever get money, you try to publish books. So by his blessing, it has become very successful by your cooperation. Now our books are being sold all over the world, and it is very satisfactory sale. So on this particular day of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's advent, try to remember his words that he wanted that many books should be published about our philosophy, and it should be given to the English-knowing public, especially because English language is now world language. We're touring all over the world, so anywhere we speak English, it is understood, except in a few places. So on this day, particularly on the advent of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I especially request my disciples who are cooperating with me to try to publish books, as many as possible, and distribute throughout the world. So when you sincerely try to please the spiritual master and fulfill his order, not only are you given the potency to do so, with every order of the spiritual master comes the necessary potency to carry it out, but Krishna gives you the potency to go even further. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, preach in English. So now Srila Prabhupada's books are translated, how many different languages? Do you have the? 80 languages. And of those different languages, how many complete? The whole Srimad Bhagavatam, whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, everything. So how pleasing this would be to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He asked to preach in English, and now it's being preached in all the languages. That will satisfy Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Thank you very much. Also today, on this day, 27 years ago, in 1996, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji very miraculously left this world to rejoin Krishna in his eternal pastimes. Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj was a very special personality. He was born in a family of strict Vaishnavas in Orissa, and he was in a renounced temperament right from the start of his life. And he was very much desirous to meet an actual spiritual master who would actually be able to guide him to achieve the ultimate goal of life. And he was very, very cautious of accepting any spiritual master any less than that standard. So well into his adult life, he was not properly initiated. So he took a pilgrimage. He toured all over India looking for a proper spiritual master, finally coming to Vrindavan. And he had saw the sign for the Krishna Bharam Mandir, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and he was to meet Srila Prabhupada there, and Prabhupada, instantly understanding his position, his first words to him were, "Have you taken sannyas? I will give you sannyas." So practically immediately he was given first and second initiation together, and in a very short amount of time, on the 20th of April, 1975, at the occasion of the opening of the Krishna Bharam Mandir, he was given the sannyas order of life. He was told to translate all of Srila Prabhupada's books into Oriyan language, which he did, and also to establish a Krishna Bharam Mandir in Bhubaneswar. Prabhupada stayed there. His health was beginning to decline. In January 1977, for 17 days on the property, and ordained the cornerstone. And Gaur Govinda Maharaj, particularly, he took up the duties as initiating spiritual master in 1985. This was a very timely acceptance of this responsibility, because our movement was undergoing some great distress and difficulty due to certain personalities who were in the role of spiritual master not being able to continue properly in that service. So he was able to give a lot of shelter to many confused and upset devotees. And he did very great service to Srila Prabhupada. And the way that he passed away, miraculously describing the pinnacle of Lord Chaitanya's Leela in Jagannath Puri, in the feelings of separation, is an amazing occurrence that can be worshipped by all devotees. So this is the 149th anniversary of His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Next year, 1874, 2024, is a notable 150-year anniversary. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhai Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.